When you find yourself in your habitual poor posture, what can you do right then to change it? Others might say you can't really do anything in the moment. Instead, you need to strengthen or stretch certain muscles in the hope that that will change things over time. Or maybe you need hands-on manipulation by someone else, which may or may not actually change your observed posture. I would say that you can change from your habitual posture to something different if you coordinate movements together. You can literally move the bony structures of your body towards the correct configuration. Now, to be clear, though you should see a genuine change in that very moment, that change will not be permanent. However, if you routinely move towards better posture, your posture will change. As you get better at getting your fascia taut and your musculature gets the leverage it needs from your fascia, your baseline posture will improve, meaning the amount of change you need to get to more optimal posture will become smaller and smaller. The amount of change you need and can get in the beginning is very large, whereas a year or two down the road, you can still get improvement, but it will be much smaller and more nuanced improvement. In this series, we've looked at some starting directions for getting out of our habitual posture. Today, we're going to look at a specific way of putting these directions into action. While F.M. Alexander, of course, did use verbal directions, Jeando Masoero invented the specific conception of making an adjustment that I will present here. The idea is that we have a set of verbal directions or orders for movements that we use our memory to recall. We give ourselves the orders, and then we put the movements into action in one controlled burst that should produce a visible change in your posture. The way that we control that burst is by making it over a 1, 2, 3 count. 1 being the start of the adjustment, 2 being the middle of the adjustment, and 3 being the point at which you stop. There should be about 1 second in between 1 and 2, and 1 second in between 2 and 3, meaning the adjustment should take about 2 seconds. We can think of it like a measure of music with 3 beats. We play a chord, a coordination of multiple movements, on the first beat, which will last through the second beat, and then we stop on the third beat. When you use the 1, 2, 3 count, you want to really stop at 3 and try to maintain the adjustment that you've made. In the early stages, you will tend to fall back into your habit fairly quickly. In your first attempts, you might immediately go back to your habitual posture. But as I said, over time you will get the fascia functioning better, which will allow the musculature to function better as well. And before long, instead of needing a huge adjustment to get your pelvis out of its downward tilt at the front, you will only need a rather small adjustment. Making the adjustment over a specific span of time like this may demand a certain mental effort that you are not used to making. Some people will find it very easy to control the starting and stopping of an adjustment. Others will find this to be a real challenge. Some examples of issues are people will count 1, 2, 3 and then move, or they will continue moving well past 3, or they will move and then say 1, 2, 3 after they've already been moving. Another common problem is drawing the count out by counting very slowly. This is something to definitely be avoided, as it's almost always the case that the person counting slowly is trying to feel out the movements rather than follow the directions. Another beneficial aspect of doing this 1, 2, 3 count is that it gets around a problem with speech. If we want to give multiple orders at once, that's not really possible with speech. We cannot say multiple things at the same time. They have to be said in sequence. We don't want to make the movements one after the other, though. We want to make them simultaneously, because to make the fascia taut, we don't want to pull in one direction and then the other. We want to pull in opposing directions at the same time. So while we do want to use speech to give ourselves directions, when the time comes to put them into action, We have to stop saying the directions and actually perform them, all at once. This is why it's important to not just have some directions. We also need a broader model that helps us understand where we're trying to go. We will look explicitly at that model in the next episode of this series. But in the meantime, let's add another direction to the set we've built so far, and then you can try out this 1, 2, 3 count system to put the directions into action. If you're using video to record yourself, and you should be if you're able, count out loud. Then see on the video. Did you really start at 1? Did you stop at 3? We don't need to count out loud in our day-to-day life, but when practicing, it's very helpful. We will define one more point for our adjustment called lumbar 3. It's on the third vertebra above your sacrum. So if you find the bony plate of the sacrum, above that you should feel the spiny processes of the vertebrae poking out. Count up to the third vertebra and you will find the point we call lumbar 3. So far, we had the directions to lift the iliacs back and up away from the knees, to move the upper sacrum back faster than the lower sacrum, and to lift the rib 8 line up away from the iliacs without allowing the upper sternum to go back or the lower sternum to go forward. And we'll add in that we want to pull lumbar 3 forward and up. This direction provides us with some antagonism to all the movement back that we have. We cannot round the back, and so pulling lumbar 3 forward and up helps prevent us from falling back. To be clear, lumbar 3 will not move forward in space unless your back is rounded, in which case it does need to go forward. The whole mid-torso and pelvis should move back relative to the legs during this adjustment, so lumbar 3 is going back in space. But we still want to pull forward and up with lumbar 3. This coordination of movements is more nuanced than what we've looked at before, but it should help you to prevent the upper sternum from coming back in space and help with any rounding of the back that could occur. So try this adjustment out, then join me next episode, and we'll take a more in-depth look at the model of good posture that we're using.